Hey, are you wondering if the people of the world have lost their minds? Have they gone completely insane? It sure seems that way with all the wokeness stuff and wrong is right and right is wrong agenda. Everyone is doing what they think is right in their own eyes, just like the times that were described in Noah's days. I mean, with all the nuclear warheads pointing at each other's nations, the world is in a nuclear disaster zone just waiting to happen. Russia invading Ukraine and murdering all those innocent children. The Hamas invading Israel. Again, more innocent women and children dying for so-called spiritual or religious affairs. All those innocent men, women, and children, we can see it all unfolding in real time in our current news media. Why, it just seems as if we're all being staged or something and we're all just watching what they want us to watch. NATO is choosing not to get involved because of the fear of nuclear world war. It would appear as if Russia was baiting the world with a hook and drawing them into a nuclear world war III. The world will have to set up a one world policing government to keep the world at peace. Do we have to have NATO set up an agenda and an agency to police the world? We simply cannot allow this to ever happen again. World war with atomic bombs will not end well. With all these brutally murdered people, all those innocent lives lost to the hands of these butchers called dictators, only to be regarded as casualties of war. The world had plenty catastrophic emergencies to deal with already. The global pandemic, the race for the cure, all the earthquakes, hurricanes, flooding, fires, and tsunamis, not to mention the fear and anxiety we all have in our hearts with every world catastrophe. It is truly an uncomfortable time to be living in. Is there really hope for mankind? Will we be able to survive all of this? Where can we find answers to these very complex questions? Who can we turn to for help? Who can save us from ourselves? Perhaps we find some honest and truthful answers. We have to go way back in time to understand all the confusion we are experiencing in our current chaotic days. Back in time to in our human history, let us travel back to a time so we can try to figure out how we got here to all this worldwide insanity. A little history lesson from the best-selling book of all times might give us the answers we are looking for. The book is simply entitled The Bible. The Bible consists of 66 books in all. There are 40 authors with every diverse background. The book was written over a period of 1,600 years, and so they could not get together and collaborate as to what they're going to say. So there must have been someone telling them what to say from the outside of our time domain. And so interesting that all the books combined together really point us to precisely having faith in our Creator. Everything revolves around Jesus, our Creator. The Bible is all about His story in history. Jesus was validated and confirmed as a real historical figure. He actually existed on planet Earth. The Bible wrote about actual events. They are facts and not fables. He was born approximately 2,000 years ago. This was during the Roman Empire occupation period. The Romans ruled the world, and that was also including Israel. Josephus was a historian at that time who wrote about the activities. Josephus wrote that Jesus of Nazareth and his followers in his journals on the pages of history to reaffirm that he's probably a pretty important guy to reference. However, Josephus was not a follower of, or he never claimed to be a follower of Jesus. He still chose to write about it in Judea at that time. He must have understood that it was something very significant. Josephus was a great validation. However, even more importantly and better validation of his existence comes from the official records of the Roman Empire. Caesar was the Roman supreme world leader, and he made a decree that a census must be taken. Everyone in Israel had to go back to their places of birth to register themselves for proper assessed taxation. Sound familiar? Biblical scholars have calculated that the birth date of baby Jesus was actually on the Jewish festival of the Feast of Trumpets. That date fell on approximately September the 11th, 3 BC. As timing would have it, Jesus was born in a little town called Bethlehem. Bethlehem was the town that had an Old Testament prophecy that prophesied the Messiah would be born there. It was recorded many hundreds of years before Jesus was born in a book called Micah, chapter 5. How amazing is that? A prophecy fulfilled in scriptures over 700 years later? His birthplace was to be in unsuspecting little town of Bethlehem. Bethlehem was also known for raising lambs. There were lots of stables and shepherds watching their flocks on the hillsides everywhere. Curiously enough, in the little town of Bethlehem, lambs were born and raised. They were being prepared for the slaughter in Jerusalem at the Jewish temple just 6 short miles away. Jesus was born in a stable just like a lamb and placed in a feeding trough, and he was wrapped in potato sacks. This was because there was no room at the inn. Because of the census being taken and people came to this region from everywhere. The scriptures do not say much about Jesus' early childhood. Most of the New Testament scriptures start recording about Jesus when he was about 30 years old. When Jesus was on our planet, he made a very interesting point about time. He actually said it several times. My time has not yet come. In Galilee, there was a wedding in Cana. Jesus, his mother, and his disciples or followers were invited and celebrated at the wedding feast. The host of the wedding ran out of wine, and that would be very embarrassing. So he quickly told Mary, and that was Jesus' mom. Mary informed Jesus that they ran out of wine. His mother knew he was going to be performing miracles soon, so she wanted the people to see his power. She thought it would be a perfect moment for Jesus to be publicly revealed as the Savior and the Messiah. But Jesus, in his infinite wisdom, responded to her by saying, "Why do you involve me in this matter now, Mom? I may not understand, and you may not understand, but I am working on a divine timetable." Jesus was fully aware of the situation and decided to honor his mom's wishes. So Mary instructed the host of the wedding feast to do whatever my son Jesus tells you to do. So Jesus gave them his instructions, and the servants filled 6 stone water jars with water. They were all amazed when they started to pour out and serve delicious red wine to the guests. And it was so good that the guy who was coordinating everything had to stop and say, "Wow, this is great wine. Most weddings that I go to, they first serve the great wine, so after people have drunk a little bit, then they bring out the less gooder wine. And this wedding, he brings out the best wine at the latter part of the wedding." So this was quite a miracle. It was the first of the miracles that are recorded in the scriptures. However, that was just the beginning. performing the miracle of turning water into wine was just the first of many. So, he also demonstrated that he was on a divine timetable. When the Jewish people tried to stone him in several occasions, he understood that it was not his time. He miraculously walked right past the people. Jesus escaped the crowds because it was not the right time for him to be stoned. He also knew that he was not going to be stoned to death. Jesus understood that he was going to have a registered public execution, also with a valid death certificate from the Roman Empire. This would validate that he existed and was crucified on a Roman cross. It appears there were specific times on the divine timetable that were needed to come into perfect fruition. One of those times that had to be perfect in timing was the crucifixion of Jesus. The timing was perfect because it was coordinated on that day and coincided with a red blood moon and also a very specific miraculous eclipse of some miraculous kind. Literally, the stars and planets aligned just perfectly. It was as if Jesus counted down to the exact hour to be arrested, then to be executed on that Roman cross. He was fully aware of everything, and he allowed it to happen. The Romans did not do anything that our Creator Jesus didn't allow to happen. And so the timing could not be better, because this also had to be precisely on a Jewish festival of Passover. Jesus was sacrificed on Passover. Earlier, John the Baptist declared, "Behold, this is Jesus. He is the Lamb who takes away the sins of the world." What? How appropriately addressed. Jesus was described as a lamb. The Lamb of Bethlehem, if you will. And he was going to be offered as the ultimate sacrificial lamb, once and for all. What a coincidence that Jesus was born where they raised lambs for sacrificing at the festival in the Jewish temple. This was only possible because Rome decreed that the census should be taken. So Joseph and Mary made the long journey to Bethlehem. At the absolute perfect time when Jesus was being crucified, hanging there on a cross, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, declaring, "It is finished, and into your hands, Father, I commit my spirit." Immediately the sun turned black. It became midnight in the middle of the day. Complete darkness fell on the hills of Jerusalem in Israel. Jesus shouted, "It was finished," at the most dreadful point on the divine timeline. Perfect timing, huh? Perfectly, some kind of solar eclipse just enveloped the city and made it a dark, dark day in human history. If that wasn't enough, a violent earthquake erupted. It rattled and shook the city of Jerusalem. The people were all so terrified. They did not know what was truly going on in their city. Also, all the visitors that came to Jerusalem to celebrate the Jewish feast of Passover, they all witnessed the darkness and felt the violent earthquake. All were very horrified. They must have thought this was it. It was the end of the world. Everyone was completely clueless. The truth of what just happened was that Jesus willingly gave his life for all humanity. He became the final, ultimate, and supreme Passover lamb. Jesus was taken down from the cross and wrapped in linen for his burial. He was placed in a tomb and had a big stone that sealed him in. He was in his grave for 2 days, but at the start of the third day, up from the grave he arose. There was such a symbolism there surrounding Jesus, his death and resurrection. There were so many layers of meaning to that, what happened there in Jerusalem. If you really think about it, Jesus was crucified on the Jewish festival of Passover. He was resurrected at the festival of the first fruits. He ascended into heaven on the feast day of Pentecost. All simple coincidences? Nah, maybe, just maybe, all on the divine timeline. What are the chances that Jesus will probably also come back to earth on another Jewish feast day? Maybe the Feast of Trumpets, perhaps. It's looking pretty good right now. Perhaps Jesus will come back on planet Earth, and it will coincide with the specific Jewish festival. Oh yeah, he said he would come back to earth again. Everything else surrounding Jesus seemed to be working together around Jewish festivals. Why would not his return back to this world also be around the Feast of Trumpets? The divine timetable may just surprise us, or will it? That was about 2,000 years ago. 2 millennia later, things are coming together very rapidly on the world stage. The nations are aligning themselves just as predicted or as prophesied by Jesus. The world is begging for a one world government, or now I guess they call themselves globalists, to bring peace, so that tyrants like Putin from Russia, Hamas from, well, you know where they are in the Middle East, they will not have the power to invade any other country again, because the globalists will control who does what on planet Earth. I can't make this stuff up. It was written 2,000 years ago. You may not be aware of this, but a lot of events were predicted about the future. How could Jesus know how things would be today in our time? And this was back 2,000 years ago. Events that are now in our present crazy and confusing times, the prophecies were actually written thousands of years ago in the Bible. And now they're being fulfilled left and right. What in the world is going on? What does it all mean? The red blood moons, solar eclipses, and earthquakes? Jesus hanging on the cross on the Jewish feast of Passover? What in the world does it all mean? How does it fit in and correspond with other current world conditions? Even a global pandemic virus mutating by man's design. Hang in there. It'll all start making sense to you. Please be patient. You will soon find out. In order for these things to make sense to us, we have to be very aware of our times and predictions that were made long ago. We cannot be ignorant of our personal understanding of that true knowledge. We must learn of these predictions that Jesus made. Also, more importantly then, we have to act upon it with appropriate response, leading us to make the right preparations necessary to make. If we don't, we may suffer eternal consequences. If you want to be prepared for the coming days, then I have good news for you. Great news. It is imperative that we grasp the understanding of the human timeline in our future history. I'll repeat that. It is very imperative that we grasp the understanding of the human timeline in future history. It will be much easier to deal with life itself at this current time that we find ourselves in. The difficult period of time on earth that will soon take place. In approximately 30 AD, Jesus had followers who were called his disciples, and he made very meticulous things known to his disciples. And they asked, well, when will this stuff be? How soon? Well, then he started answering a question about future events. He actually illustrated he could predict 2,000 years into the future. The disciples did not understand most of what he predicted. And how could they? Most of them were just simple fishermen and tax collectors. They weren't taught or trained by the scholars of the Old Testament. But one of the fishermen, one of the disciples named Peter, may have understood a glimpse of future events. This was only through spiritual revelation. He may have had an interesting insight that was revealed to him about timing in the divine timeline itself. Peter claimed in 2 Peter chapter 3, with Jesus 1,000 years is as one day, and one day is as 1,000 years. And Peter probably got that from the Psalms. So, either way, I wonder what Peter meant by that. The math and science of the miraculous solar eclipse, the red blood moons, and the earthquake tell us that Jesus was crucified with the current technology that we have, that we could place the stars and the planets. And all of that occurred, according to scientists and astronomers, on April the 3rd, 33 AD. That was the actual date our astronomers claim today that the signs in the heavens had occurred in Israel. They designed computer programs that can show us how the stars in the night skies were 2 millennia ago. That was very specifically when the red blood moon, the earthquake, and the solar eclipse took place in Jerusalem. It was recorded on that date in human history. Science says that the actual date was 4/3/33 AD. Scientists confirm this to be true through their programs that they developed. We are now living on the earth 2,000 years later from the crucifixion day of Jesus. Mathematically, the year that completes the 2 days is 2033. 2033, that's just right around the corner. Only a few short years away. Can you believe it? The math that confirms the completion of 2 millennia on Earth's recorded history after the death of Jesus on the cross. Strictly mathematically speaking, the beginning of the 3rd day starts on approximately April the 4th, 2033. How absolutely amazing. How incomprehensible is that? We are the generation that may witness the completion of 2,000 years of history, or 2 days in Jesus' time. I'm not predicting or setting any dates. I just do not know when Jesus will come back for those who love him and have started a personal relationship with him. Biblically, I'm not permitted to set a date of his return. I can only say that Jesus will come. I cannot say, rather, that Jesus will come on September 30th, 2033 at 8 a.m. Can't do it. Jesus made it very clear that no man knows the hour or the day of my return. The Bible is very precise in its description of the last days. Jesus actually referred it as the end of the age. And in his infinite wisdom, Jesus, our Creator, left it very clearly open with a mandate that we are prepared and ready to meet him in the air, in the clouds, when he comes. He didn't set dates. He just said, be ready, be prepared. Look forward to seeing me. Are you waiting every day? Is this the day, Jesus, you're going to come? Expectant, excited about his soon return. And mathematically, I guess that the beginning of the 3rd day may revolve around many prophecies coming to pass and being fulfilled. One major prediction that Jesus would come back and get those who have prepared to meet him in the air. Will Jesus really come back for those who really love him? Really? Do you love Jesus? Will he come back for you? The Bible is full of prophecy about Jesus coming back to earth. It is recorded in the book of Matthew 24. Jesus said, so it is. When you see certain activities starting to happen on the world stage, then you can say that my coming is close, even at the door. Again, I repeat very emphatically, No man knows the hour or the day, not even the angels in heaven know the hour or the day of my return. Only the Father, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus know the hour and the day. We have to wonder if Peter may have understood that Jesus would come back in 2,000 years. Why would Peter say in 2 Peter chapter 3, brethren, do not be confused. Ask yourselves, when is he going to come back for us? You have to understand that with Jesus, 1 day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as 1 day. Could Peter have understood 2,000 years later Jesus would come back and get his believers? How could Peter possibly even come to that conclusion on his own? The followers of Jesus thought he would come back for them in their lifetime. Peter wanted to confirm and not mislead the believers in disappointment. Peter knew that with Jesus, he just does things in his own time. So he did not know about future events. It is easy for us to see now. It's been approximately 2,000 years, and he has not returned yet. So Jesus was aware of the time to come on the divine timetable. He painstakingly told his followers that he would be arrested and crucified by public execution by the Roman Empire. Then he would die and be put into a tomb for 2 days, but most importantly, he would rise again from the dead at the start of the 3rd day. Death will not keep him down there in the grave. Death has no power over him. He's the creator of the universe. There's no way he's going to stay dead very long. He said to his disciples, but their eyes, their hearts must have been heavy and glazed over. They just did not understand what he meant by, I will rise again from the dead on the beginning of the 3rd day. If they did understand it, well, then obviously they would have surrounded the tomb waiting for his resurrection, especially at the beginning of the 3rd day. They would see if Jesus was going to be raised from the dead, just as he predicted. They saw Jesus raise his friend Lazarus from death. Why couldn't he resurrect himself on the 3rd day? Well, the truth be told, the followers of Jesus were actually scared to death. They were confused. They doubted. They just were plain scared. And they hid from the Roman soldiers because they thought that they would be next to be rounded up and crucified because they were associated with Jesus. The powers to be thought that the followers may cause an uprising, so the disciples would have to be silenced right away. That is why the disciples of Jesus were hiding and trying to save their own skins. They witnessed all of Jesus' miracles, and yet they did not take Jesus simply at his word. It's crazy to think that we are now in the same boat. We have to decide if we will take Jesus simply at his word. Should we be waiting and expecting Jesus to come for us very soon? Perhaps any time now. He said he would come. I mean, come on. Has it not been long enough? 2,000 years of human history later? It may seem like forever to us, but from Jesus' perspective, he's been only gone for a couple days, just gone away for the weekend. In the book of Hosea, in chapter 6, the writer declared something very astonishing and very provocative. He wrote, he was with us, and he was gone for 2 days, and after 2 days he will revive us. At the beginning of the 3rd day, he will raise us up so we can live in his presence. What could the prophet Hosea be talking about? What could that prophecy mean? Could it possibly mean he was with us on the earth till 33 AD? Then he was gone into heaven for 2 days or 2,000 years, 2 millennia? But on the beginning of the 3rd day, he will raise us up so that we can live in his presence. Hello, can't make this stuff up. Maybe. Streets of gold, the sea, the crystal sea, the emerald rainbow around the throne. Yeah, we're going to be living in his presence. That's for sure. So how unbelievably awesome is that? Could simple math verify that prophecy? It cannot be, can it? Our Creator is not bound by any earthly time at all because he is eternal and timeless time. Why then would he choose patterns of time on earthly years? There's a lot of repeating numbers throughout the Bible. Scripture shows us that the meaning of those numbers like the number 7, is known for the number of completion. 6 days after the Creator created, and on the 7th day he ceased from creating. 8 is the number of new beginnings. The Israelites wandered the desert for 40 years. It rained for 40 days for Noah in his ark. Jesus then again was in the desert for 40 days, praying and fasting. I know this is all coincidence, but is it? I mean, would it be that Jesus was in the desert, the same desert that the Israelites had to travel through to show us the way and to be an example for us on how we should live our lives? So either way, repeating numbers, and that would then lead us to another question. Jesus was in the tomb for 2 days, but at the beginning of the 3rd day, he was resurrected back to life. Could it be possible that the same numbers would repeat again and again? Would Jesus be in heaven for 2 days and or 2,000 years? Would Jesus come for his people at the beginning of the 3rd day? That would be exciting. So we could live in his presence as it was described in Hosea. Was Hosea chapter 6 a literal prophecy? It is so fascinating to understand the math of the divine timeline. It appears that something very significant happens every 2,000 years. It was approximately 2,000 years from Adam and Eve to Abraham and his miraculous son that was born, Isaac. Abraham was asked to prove his loyalty to his Creator by sacrificing his son Isaac in the regions of Mount Moriah. I wonder where that is. Well, at the at the last minute possible, he was stopped by an angel from killing his son. He proved his love and loyalty to his Maker. This was very significant because 2,000 years later, Jesus was sacrificed, guess what? In the same regions